Hey everybody, Will here, and today I am upgrading my FPV setup to be used with my Phantom, and I'm going to be comparing two monitors here that I have, two 7-inch monitors. The first one is the Lilliput 329DW, and the other one is the Flysight Black Pearl RC801. The two monitors are very similar on paper, with the Lilliput having 31 5.8 GHz channels and the Flysight having 32, and both coming in at about $230. Of the two, the Flysight is by far the most popular. It's the #1 seller in video monitors on Amazon and boasts a number of different features and modes that seem to make it the ultimate FPV monitor. Inside the box, the monitor comes in a clean, compact unit with a built-in LiPo battery. A number of connections line the outside of the housing, and the screen uses a 1024 by 600 pixel display. Also in the box is a sun shield, a pair of antennas, a couple of video cables, and a pair of JST to DC connectors. Also included outside the box is a power adapter to charge the unit. Unfortunately, I found the sunshade to be among the flimsiest and most poorly designed I've seen. It's composed of 3 loose parts that need to be assembled sides first. Once on, it's effective, however it's definitely not fast and easy to assemble. Both these monitors are diversity monitors, which means that there are actually 2 receivers in the unit, and it shows you the image from the signal that is the strongest, hence the device having 2 antennas. I chose to try out the Lilliput as well because it seemed to compare pretty closely to the Flysight, with what seemed like a few improvements. And I've also had some luck with a number of their 7-inch displays for DSLRs. One area where this monitor falls short is the resolution, being only 800 by 400 pixels. However, considering we're working with an SD signal, I figured this shouldn't be an issue. Inside the box, I found a soft, foldable sunshade and a considerably more bulky Lilliput monitor. Another big feature that drove me to try the Lilliput was its use of external batteries. It includes a battery mounting plate and then adapters for LPE6 batteries and F970 batteries. I have a bunch of extra LPE6s from the Canon 5D Mark III, so this was a huge plus for me. And in addition to the AC power cable, the kit also came with an LPE6 battery, a not particularly useful remote, a pair of video cables that, unlike the Flysights, are identical but are of different lengths, a pair of antennas, an LPE6 charger, and a camera shoe mount adapter, for some reason. Another big plus for the Lilliput is the 400 nit luminance over the Flysight's 300. The sun can definitely make it hard to see these displays, so the brighter the better, and hopefully the Lilliput delivers. In any case, the foldable sunshade is certainly easier and more convenient than the Flysight's offering. The mount for the shade can also be detached to make the unit a little bit smaller, however it's still no comparison for the compactness of the Black Pearl. What's worse is that all Lilliput monitors I've seen have a built-in battery slot on the back of the device, onto which you attach a specific battery plate and then insert the battery. The 329DW doesn't, requiring you first install a battery plate panel onto the unit, plug in an external connector, followed by the model-specific battery plate, followed by the battery. The battery on the Flysight is replaceable, however at $60 I don't see myself doing that. And putting the two assembled monitors on a scale shows the Lilliput weighs over 100 grams more. So I charge the 2 units and move on to the setup. I have the BOSCAM transmitter on the Phantom set to frequency 4, channel 7. I'm a bit new to wireless video, but it was very easy to set up with its own receiver. As I powered up the Black Pearl, I figured out that instead of using 1 through 4 for the frequency, I was given the option A, B, E, and F. And after fumbling around with the controls a bit, I was successfully able to tune to E7. I'm not the biggest fan of the button layout, however there seem to be plenty of picture and menu options. On the top of the unit are LEDs that indicate which antenna is currently receiving the best signal. In addition to its diversity mode, the Flysight also allows you to receive 2 different signals at once and manually switch between them. It also features AV outs for each individual mode, as well as an additional AV in, and even an HDMI in that could come in handy for using this monitor along with a DSLR. The Lilliput is not as feature-rich. Its receivers can't be individually tuned, and otherwise only has a single AV in and AV out option. And while I found the controls much more easy and familiar, setting up the wireless signal needs to be done manually using a DIP switch on the back of the unit by looking up your channel on one of the lookup tables provided. This is yet another channel numbering scheme, which, after figuring out how to use the table, had my E7 listed as Channel 31. And the table with the pictures looks like it's upside down compared to the actual switches, but once I figured that out, the signal came in clear. So the setup round goes to the Black Pearl, and next I headed out to see how well they receive a signal in the field. So one thing that I noticed as I was setting this up out here together, brightness-wise, the overall brightness, I would say that the Lilliput is brighter, but the Flysight's just a little bit more clear, it seems like. And actually the sharpness of the image seems to be sharpened a bit. I think that's actually some post-processing done by the Flysight. And it's nice and everything, but the Lilliput just seems to have a much more bright but flat look. So that's actually probably a better thing in the bright sun. Right now it's almost sundown, so actually this one probably looks a little bit more detailed, but I think in the bright sun this is going to be a bit better. We're at 50 meters, just some slight distortion and noise. I seem to be having more breakups on the Flysight than the Lilliput. The Lilliput seems to have a stronger reception. You can see on the Flysight, you can see those antennas, the diversity mode bouncing around from antenna to antenna. I don't have that showing on the Lilliput, of course. I can't tell if that's happening or not, but the signal just seems to be a little bit more consistent on the Lilliput than on the Flysight. It seems like when you're at the far end of your range, the Flysight, even with the static, seems to come in a teeny bit more where you can kind of recognize the numbers and recognize the image. But for the most part, except for that very extreme end of your distance, it seems like the Lilliput has a much stronger signal, at least on this channel, which is 47. And I'm going to try a couple different channels to see if I get different results, but the Lilliput is the winner right now. See right here where the antenna is behind the drone right now, and it's facing me. The Lilliput seems it's back and forth. So this is the second day with flying with both monitors side by side, and today it actually looks like the Flysight is the cleaner signal. Another thing I'm noticing too is all of a sudden the Flysight, they've been out for about the same amount of time, and the Flysight is showing me a low battery right now, which is pretty annoying because I'm pretty sure I charged it earlier today, which makes that mean that the Flysight has a really bad battery life. I'm going to test that out separately in a bit. But otherwise, the Lilliput actually has a bit of a, when it gets farther away, I'm noticing the image becomes a little bit washed out. Everything becomes very kind of monochrome and just a bit bright overall and lacking any contrast. And the Flysight actually seems to be the brighter of the two. Totally, it seems like a slightly more stable signal on the Lilliput, but even with the noise and everything and the occasional breakups, I'm having an easier time right now following the Flysight than the Lilliput. Okay, battery dead. And after a few more test flights, I have decided that the winner is going to be the Flysight Black Pearl. Now, to me, this was just a much more kind of polished, finished product, and I mean, that's kind of the main reason why. There are a few issues that I had with the Lilliput, particularly related to some of the reasons why I gave the Lilliput a shot, by the way. I knew going into this thing that the battery life on the Flysight wasn't that great. I did a test too, and I found out the Flysight had about a 1.5 hour battery life, and the Lilliput with the LPE6 that it came with had about 2 hours of battery life. But the big problem here, and again, I have a bunch of LPE6s, so that's great, and I can have some spares in the bag, but the big problem is this situation right here. It's just so much thicker than I was expecting it to be. This is a 5-inch monitor. I've had a bunch of 7s, and they're all about the same as this. And you can see it's not as deep, it's not as big and bulky. And part of the reason was for some reason this doesn't have a built-in battery slot on this thing. So it has this external wire situation with this external plate, and that just wastes so much space, and it's just so annoying. I'm not quite sure why they didn't go this way. And on top of that, one thing I realized too, it has this little LED light on the power button. If you leave the battery in, it'll die in over a day or two. Which is just so incredibly stupid. Again, the reason I bought this is I wanted to have a nice package that I could throw in my bag that I can't forget a piece to. And I mean, I guess you can pull the plug to deal with it that way, or you can remove the battery, but then you might forget the battery. They also have some issues making LPE6 plates, by the way. This is too tight. That's why when I pulled the battery, it pulls the plate with it. Same thing with this one, by the way. It's not that one, it's a Lilliput. So, very, very disappointed with the swappable battery situation on the Lilliput. And definitely not worth the trouble, I think. And to deal with the low battery life on the Flysight, at the very least they give you one of these, which is a DC to JST connector. So I'm just gonna throw that in my bag, and I have a JST to XT60 connector in there anyway for some other stuff. And you always have extra or half-used LiPos that can then keep you up and running or charge your battery while you're in the car or something like that. So that's a good thing to deal with that situation. I'd rather deal with this when I'm low on battery than deal with this every single day. So that's one reason. Another big reason why I decided to go with the Flysight is I think the picture just looked a little bit clearer and a little bit better. Not entirely sure which one officially is brighter, but I know that the Flysight has a lot more controls over the image. So, and that's an important thing too, by the way. It's not just a matter of like turning it up all the way or setting it, perfectly at one location and then having that be your universal great settings. One thing I did notice is that depending on where you are, whether it's an urban environment or whether you're, where there's streets and there's houses that you're filming, or you're just filming like landscape and you're out in fields and stuff like that, you can, it's nice to have all those options there to set up the picture to make it easiest to see what you're needing to see at that particular location. So having much more settings on this one was definitely a huge plus. Also, the viewing angle on the Lilliput wasn't very good, and this one just looked a lot better. It does have a higher resolution too. I really don't think that came into play with the FPV stuff that I was doing. However, when you include the fact that it comes with an HDMI in, this is a nice display, and it's going to be great to have this as a secondary monitor for DSLRs and any other stuff that I do. So really great with that HDMI, and also just the way this thing is loaded with features. All these, another AV in and all these AV outs. And also the fact that you can tune it to multiple wireless signals, two wireless signals at once and switch between them, or the diversity mode, whereas this one has just the diversity mode. And also this horrible switch situation. Trying to switch it, again, I tried to switch it to a few different channels to test, and this one just took some time to do. And again, both times that I set it up upside down. It might not be that it's printed upside down, but I don't know how to read this switch key is what it means. But this is just a pain. Surely you see that this is annoying and kind of old school compared to a much nicer software, clicking a few buttons and you got it set up. So much happier with the Flysight there. Just talk really quickly about how these two things receive a signal. They seem to be fairly comparable, but at the end of the day, I think the Lilliput actually looked a teeny bit better when you were well within your range. Just when you're close and you're flying and there's not a danger of you losing your signal. This seemed to just smooth the picture a little bit more. With the Flysight, it just seemed like there was always a teeny bit of static and a little bit of noise going on. And I think that's normal for FPV. That's what I saw on my other receiver too. So I think the Lilliput's doing something to smooth that over. But the downside is when you got towards the end of the range, the Lilliput seemed to have more issues. It seemed to, again, get that monochrome blown out look, and then it would disappear faster. And when it was going really crazy, when it was completely losing it, the picture was a little bit more contorted and stretched and cut in half. And the Flysight just did a little bit better job of giving you whatever it could, no matter how terrible it was, no matter how staticky it was. It would just kind of give you a hint of an image. And like there was one time where I flew really far. I couldn't see it no matter what, it's just too far. And I turned it around too because the antenna's on this thing on the back. So I turned it around to face me and lost my signal completely. And I tried to guess kind of where home was and to fly towards home, not seeing anything on either monitor. And I was only able to confirm that I was coming home because I saw the numbers on my IOSD on this monitor slowly, again, for a fraction of a second, just seeing a flash and then seeing it again and seeing that that number was dropping, not being able to understand the image at all of the landscape. But being able to see that I was coming home with this one and not this one. I didn't see this one until I was well sure I was coming home and even getting a picture back on this one. So at the end of the range, this is definitely the better one, and that's kind of, again, it gets scary. I could have lost, if I didn't have a very good FPV setup, I could have lost it. And that's not true, I could have probably used the home lock button too. And I think that is going to be about it. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Lilliput is, again, a pretty great brand to go to for these DSLR monitors. They're on the cheaper side of stuff. They're a little bit more bulky, not normally this bulky. But they also come up set up and ready to go, and I think that's their thing. And like they did some point, this one has 1/4-inch mounts on the sides too. Why you would ever use that? Why you would ever use the remote that it comes with, I'm not quite sure. Maybe if it had an HDMI in, but you can see this is the thing they do. There's an HDMI block-off plate right there. It doesn't have it available on this particular model. But why would you want the remote? Why would you want the shoe mount on this thing? It doesn't make any sense. So I think that's kind of their thing, and unfortunately, they just, if they want to build a great FPV monitor, they should just take a little bit more time to think about it and do it properly, and I'm sure they could. So that's what they did with the Flysight. They don't have a ton of different models. They don't have a watered down version of this and a super version of this. This is it, and it's great. I'm really happy with it. Again, with the exception of the low battery power, and also the sun shield, I will say, was awful on this thing. Lilliput actually has a really great design that I've seen, not this one, which is much better than this situation, but they have one that's like a shield too, and then it just unfolds and the sides pop out and it's super secure, and then it's a quick thing, it has a clip, and there's different styles, but this is by far one of the worst I've seen. So yeah, that's about it, but very happy overall. I think this is a great design, and again, for the price, super happy with this thing, and I'm sure I'll be using it for more than just FPV too, so very happy. And moving on, probably the last thing I'll be doing with FPV for a while is going to be testing out a few antennas. We didn't quite take full advantage yet of these diversity monitors. I also didn't see any sort of range increase between my old receiver, the single antenna receiver, and this thing. And one thing we're going to be trying out next, which I think will be a huge boost, is going to be trying out a few different antennas. You'll notice like this style here, which comes on some DJI products, is a lot better for drones flying around on this end too, not just on my receiver's end. These are just your basic, come with every wireless device you've ever seen antennas. They're not the best. And yeah, through a few of these options, I have some like cloverleaf antennas here too, and some directional antennas. The idea is that you'll have two style antennas, both kind of performing better in different situations on this thing, and it'll be choosing between the two of them. And hopefully that'll do a little bit better for our range and make things a little bit better. Otherwise, that's going to be about it. So make sure you are subscribed and head over to facebook.com/whereyouddesign and like the page. And otherwise, that is going to be the end. Thanks for watching.